Yeah, thank you very much, Patrick, for the kind introduction. Distinguished guests, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to address the Arctic Circle 2015 conference, and I would like to thank President Grimson and his team to make that happen. I'm also personally very happy to be back in Iceland. Patrick already introduced the European Climate Foundation and quoted our chairman, so I won't add to that at this stage. But I would like to start with the brief film, actually, on the topic that I want to focus on, shipping and the Arctic. The film is rather provocative, and I chose it for two reasons. First of all, I realized this is the last session before coffee break, so I thought I'd get the adrenaline going a little bit. And second, because I want to make a little bit of promotion, because as this is kind of the quick run-through, so we have a breakout session at 3:30, and for those who want to see the full movie and meet the real experts on the topic, so I would welcome you for our breakout. So please start with the film.
Whatever screen you're watching this on, whatever chair you're sitting in, whatever clothes you're wearing, whatever glass is by your side, it almost certainly came to you from far away. And it almost certainly came to you in containers like these and on a ship like this.
I'll put some stuff in here, put some stuff down there. Here's another place for stuff here. I'll put some stuff over there. You put your stuff over there. I'll put my stuff over here. Here's another place for stuff. Hey, we got more places than we've got stuff. We're gonna have to buy more stuff.
Bunker fuel is the material that is burned in most ships, and it's used motor oil.
This stuff should not be burnt. This stuff is revolting. It should not be burnt.
Thanks to climate change, melting ice has opened new routes for ships and raised concerns.
Using the Arctic route can cut the travel distance by 7,000 kilometers compared to the conventional shipping route through the Suez Canal.
There's a war over who will run this Egyptian waterway, the Suez Canal.
Due to climate change and the melting of the polar ice caps, it's predicted that the Northern Sea route will be available for shipping companies to use.
The future of the world economy, to some extent, is dependent on the Arctic.
It's not a question of if the Arctic will be developed, it's happening.
It's going to be like the Wild West.
Yeah, thank you very much. The film is from Dutch filmmaker, so I hope I didn't promise too much. From Dutch filmmaker Bernice Notenboom, you will be able to meet her at our breakout. She calls the movie Sea Blind. And the reason for doing so is as the contribution of shipping to climate change seems in many ways invisible, as it happens on high sea when nobody is watching. So a few words on European Climate Foundation. So it's the largest non-profit philanthropic foundation in Europe on energy transition and climate change. It's part of a global network, so we do have sister organizations in US, India, and China, and it is committed to fact-based analysis, multi-stakeholder convening, so with industry, political actors, academia, and civil society in Europe at European Commission level and in European member states. And we concretely work on power market reform, on transport, mobility, and buildings efficiency, and we do have a small program on shipping and on the Arctic, in which I will focus. So what is the problem? If you put this, what you've just seen into perspective. So up to now, the percentage, the share of shipping in global CO2 emissions is about around 3%. That has already been a 70% jump in global shipping emissions since 1990. So if current trends prevail, then this will increase to up to a factor of 5 by 2050 from 2012 levels, so which means 14% of global CO2 emission. And we have been talking about climate change and the lineup for Paris for the last 2 days. If these emissions should be in line with 2 degrees scenario, they would need to be cut by 50%. That is a lot. Beyond CO2, there's also the air pollution on NOx, sulfur dioxides, black carbon is also significant. The air pollution from shipping has been estimated to cause 50,000 premature deaths per year in Europe. And just to give you a standard of comparison, during one day, one cruise ship emits as much sulfur dioxide as 370 million cars, as much particulate matter as 1 million cars, and as much NOx as 420,000 cars. So it's not little, and port cities around the world suffer from air pollution problems, and you may have seen pictures actually how that could look like when you see at Chinese cities. In addition, the fuel, the cheap fuel most of these ships are being fueled by is called heavy fuel oil. And burning heavy fuel oil results into black carbon, and that has a specific connotation for the Arctic. Heavy fuel oil is among the dirtiest and most harmful fuels on the planet. And it's very persistent in Arctic waters. So if in case of an oil spill, that is really tough. It contains 22,500 times more sulfur than road fuel, and it's a cheap byproduct from refineries. Heavy fuel oil sludges are the greatest source in case of illegal oil discharge from ship, and that does happen from time to time. In a way, the Arctic is a magnifying glass for climate change, in a way, a maniticle for the world. So this is why the Arctic Circle in our mind is so important. The science, research, and data on global warming and its cause are super clear, and you have been listening to that for the last 2 days. It's about man-made CO2 emissions. You also have seen Chinese simulation yesterday that in the bow scenario, sea ice may be gone end of century, and we know if Arctic is gone, our planet is in significant trouble. Now the connection of Arctic and shipping. Black carbon, that I've just said, from burning of heavy fuel oil accelerates ice melt as it absorbs rather than reflects heat. And 40% of Greenland ice melt is due to black carbon. So Arctic shipping with HFO really is a real booster for global climate change. Currently, there's zero spill response capability in the Arctic. So if one of those ships actually has an oil spill, so there's almost no plan, or it's no reasonable plan to save that. And you all may remember the pictures from the Valdez oil spill. So this is scary. So is there a solution out there? Actually, the same situation was in the Antarctic. And in 2005, the consultative parties in the Antarctic requested IMO, I'll come to that, to take steps. And it took 6 years to get that enacted. So we think our partners and ourselves think that the IMO or the responsible parties should work towards an HFO use ban for the Arctic too, and that may be really important. Now, this issue is getting more and more important as the Northern Sea route opens up for increased vessel for obvious reasons, and you've heard a lot about that. So, but basically exposing the most pristine and vulnerable parts of this planet to a potential threat by those deadly fuels is something, and by actually which burning them emits black carbon and blackens the ice and increases the ice melt, we think is not a good idea. So at least the opening up should be accompanied with appropriate regulation. Now, the regulation would have to come from IMO. This is the UN agency which is responsible for international shipping, including marine pollution by ships. And it basically, membership includes the countries on the globe, NGOs, and so on. In the past, IMO has been very slow in adopting this, but I'm being told that actually in the lineup for Paris, the situation has been as good as it ever was. Now, there are actually, the good news is, in order to deal with all these pollutants, NOx, SOx, with the CO2, there are technologies out there. What made a real difference is, also within the IMO, that the Marshall Islands, that is actually the third largest shipping registry and a small island in the Pacific, was first time calling for a global sectoral CO2 reduction target, and is obviously apparently joined by the Pacific bloc in order to support that. So first time actually in history that it's possible that it's emerging that there may be a majority for a global sectoral CO2 reduction target at the IMO level. So far it was basically the Europeans working at that. So that is one thing. So the other thing is, the other lever is energy efficiency on ships. So for new ships, there already is a target out there. But as you can imagine, I mean, the new ships is only a very small number of the total. So if you don't work on existing ships, then you will not get very far. And actually, there are discussions out there on labeling. It's like a little bit like appliances, like your refrigerator. So there are labelings out there that actually could certify existing fleets, and that may come. There is a sulfur control mechanism now, or regulation, and it's very important actually for. Until 2020, there should be a start date for global low sulfur fuel limits of 0.5%, which is actually very progressive and would shut out HFO to a large extent. And it's very important to keep that. And then we think black carbon should be actually limited in the Arctic. So the good news is also that. There are the technologies to make that happen is basically already there. In addition, there's no need to have the HFO, so there's other fuels like the marine diesel oil, which is low sulfur fuel. There are particulate filters like in diesel cars. There are mechanisms to get the NOx out. So there's scrubber technologies. So there's a lot of technology out there. Of course, it does cost something. And the industry so far has basically reduced CO2 by speed regulation. So the interesting thing is that if speed actually goes down only 10%, the CO2 emission halves. And by now you can actually control speed by satellite. So there is a monitoring controlling system out there. There's also the advent of emission control areas in ports or in sensitive areas. So there's a lot going on there. And the other good news, it doesn't cost that much. Yeah? So that's always a point, the question of perspective. But to give you some number, if you put all these technologies in, low sulfur fuels, filters, etc., the cost per container would go up by 3%. And if you calibrate in terms of goods and customer goods, a pair of shoes would maybe go up by 2 cents, or an iPad by 1 cent. And so this is actually in the normal variation. So for customers, I mean, it doesn't really make a difference. Now, Paris is a real opportunity here. Shipping, if you put it all together, would be the 6th largest, most polluting CO2 country. And the European Council, and lately this week the European Parliament, has been now asking IMO to really go ahead now and install a global reduction target until 2016, which so far there is not, so it's largely unregulated. And this is being supported by OECD, by many international organizations. It seems, though, in the lineup for Paris, the latest draft for the Paris deal does not mention that. So it does remove the previous calls for global CO2 reduction targets. And actually, the outgoing Secretary General of IMO is still warning against setting carbon reduction targets, as it may hurt global trade. Now, I'm concluding with a call to action. So this is really a global topic. In a way, the CO2 emissions by the shipping sector, and the same is true for aviation, are not owned by any one country. So there needs to be a mechanism for everybody to come together. And the top priority should be in the line of Paris to reinstate the shipping tax in the Paris draft, and to ask IMO to really make true on the promises. And it won't work until all the organizations that I've named up here, and I'm specifically mentioning the Arctic Council with the US chairmanship, to work together to make that happen. Thank you very much.